Today, I welcome you at lesson 2, Introduction to Computer Studies. And this week, we'll be treating hardware components. If you recall from the last class where we treated computer system, we talked about data processing and we talked about the different method of data processing. So in this new week, we'll be looking at the different components of a computer system, which is the hardware components. We'll be talking about the hardware components. We'll be talking about the devices that makes up the hardware components. So see you in class. Okay, so we'll welcome back to class, and like I earlier mentioned, that today we'll be treating the hardware components. Today. So in our previous lesson, we learned about the computer system, and I can recall that I mentioned that the computer system is an electronic machine that that's that's used for performing calculations and controlling operations that can be expressed either in logical or numerical terms. And we talked about data processing, which we laid emphasis on data and information. We talked about the methods of data processing, and I gave three methods of data processing, which is manual, mechanical, and also the electronic data processing. Then we talked about characteristics of a computer. We talked about the speed. We talked about the versatility, and among others. So now this week we're looking at the computer hardware components. So at the completion of this lesson, you'll be able to define what a computer hardware is. You'll be able to describe how a computer hardware works and also the characteristics and types of a computer hardware. So the hardware component. Um, you will say, okay, like we are human now. There are some parts of our bodies that we can actually see. We can see our hand with our eyes. We can see our legs. We can see, yes, we can see our legs. We can see our fingernails. Yes. So the hardware component is the physical part of the computer system that we can actually see. We can touch them, we can feel them. Those are the hardware component. They refer to the physical part of a computer system. So there are different types. We have you can see, I know somebody is saying, okay, yes, I can see my keyboard. Yes, the keyboard is part of it. We have our hard drive, we have our mouse, our printers. They are all part of the hardware component. Look at, yes, you can see the keyboard, you can see our monitor, you can see our hard drive, you can see the processor. They are all what they are, like kind of the kind of physical components of the computer system that come together to form the computer system. So we have these characteristics of the computer hardware. You said, okay, they are made by um specialists or hardware engineers. Yes, we have, like, for our processor now we have the Intel. So it is actually made by like the engineer. We have like our computer casing where everything is being embedded in is made by so engineers too. So hardware determines what software will be used in the computer. Yeah. So the kind of hardware we can see for like our laptop now, we cannot actually have the same component like we have for our desktop computer. Then the hardware consists of part that one can touch and feel. Yes, because I can touch my mouse, I can touch my keypad, I can place my hand on my screen, because they are just the part of the computer that we can touch with our hands. Then we cannot, not easy to change particular hardware component. Like I cannot say, okay, now because I have issues on my motherboard. The motherboard is actually inside the system. We're actually going to come to that, and you just open your CPU and just bring it and say, you cannot just, you can't do that to your hardware component. Then they are somehow expensive to acquire. Yes, the hardware is sometimes expensive to acquire if you are trying to get the portability and something that is going to be very, 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 very wonderful for our system. Sometimes it comes. Then the primary components of the computer hardware. So you see all these various parts of the computer that we can see, that we can touch, and we can feel. They actually have, they come in units, because we have the input devices, we have the central processing unit, then we have the output devices. So firstly, let us take the input devices. So like I earlier, like now we are taking the input devices. You can see now. So the input devices, they are those devices that will allow us as a user to input data into a computer. You will recall from our first lesson when we talked about data. We said, okay, like as a user of the computer, we are going to type in our input. So you see, these are the devices that allow us to perform the task. Like now we can see that, okay, the most obvious input devices are the mouse and the keyboard. Yes, because the mouse and the keyboard, they are very, very, very important input devices to the system. So the keyboard is a kind of is the main input devices for most computers, because they have a many sets of typical Windows keyboard. Like there are different types of typical Windows. So it contains our alphabet, it contains our numerical keys, it contains our punctuation keys. So it's just similar to those of a typewriter. I showed you a typewriter when in our first lesson when we talk about the mechanical method. So the keyboard is helps us, and we have keyboard actually comes in two types. We have the multimedia keyboard and we also have the ordinary keyboard. Then let's look at our mouse. Let's look at the mouse here. No, this is not like the mouse that we have to chase around in our house. Though even though it's shaped like that, but it comes handy for us to just place our hand on it and just move. Like now you can see the because I'm using my mouse. Actually, you can look at the point. I'm using my mouse to just control this from here. So the mouse is under input devices used in computer, and it's a device that controls the movement of the cursor or pointer on a display screen. So very when I'm using my mouse, like you can see, I'm using my mouse to point at the scanner. I'm using my mouse for the web camera. This is my mouse. Then we have our joystick. We have our microphone. Like we've heard seen our churches at event center, people use a microphone. Then you have our speaker giving us the audio. So then we have our web camera, like when I used to make the introductory video, the web camera that allows you to see me. Yes, so all these are all types of input devices. You use it to, like when you use them to input your data, then it process the data. Then we have the output devices. So our output devices are just the one that process the data and then give us the information. So like we have our webcam, you can see the webcam here again because it actually gives us it gives us the view, our view. You can see the monitor displays the screen. The monitor is actually a screen that display what we actually type. So if you see the picture of the monitor here, you can see the monitor, there is a mouse there and there's a keyboard. So the keyboard, now when you type in the keyboard, you can see it display on the monitor. Then we have our printer. The printer also used to print out our hard documents. We have our headphones, we have our speakers. Like I mentioned, that okay, now there's no way we're going to have a microphone without having a speaker. So that's just the essence of our speaker there, and these are all input, they are all output devices. So um all these the monitor is the display device. It helps you to display your information. So let's move to the next, looking at the system unit. So you see, the system unit houses a lot of things. That is our central processing unit. It's also referred as to the brain of the computer because of it controls the whole process, everything the computer is doing. Just like we have our brain, that's the brain, like our human brain. So the computer was like the brain. The CPU was like the brain of the computer. So first of all, you can see here we have our motherboard. So the motherboard is a very, 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 very important component of the personal computer because it's just like the heart of the computer. Yes, like our human heart. Yes, that's where we have the motherboard. So sometimes it's called the system board. It can be called planner board. It can also be called base board or the main board because it provides the common link to all other components inside the PC. See this motherboard, it controls every link to all major components. You can see the motherboard. From the motherboard you can have it sent to the CPU. It controls all common link to all other components is being done on the motherboard, and including the CPU, the memory, disk drive, our video and sound adapters, the keyboard, the mouse, and other peripheral components are all being connected to the what? They are all being connected to the motherboard. And because the motherboard is the main circuit, every component at some point communicate through the motherboard, either directly plugging into it or by communicating through one of the motherboard ports. So we see when we have our cables are connected to several ports on our CPU. Yes, so its purpose inside the PC is to provide a platform for all other documents, for all other components and peripherals to talk to each other. So the modem, they come in different features, and it contains the processor slot. So that's where the processor is. You can see it. You can see our microprocessor chip. Yeah, this is our microprocessor chip. So it contains the processor slot, and the processor is used for the processor. It comes in memory banks. Yes, look at, you can see the main memory chips mounted on modules. So it's on modules. So it comes with what? It comes with a memory bank. Then we have the AGP slot. We have the AGP slot. We have the PCI slot. We have the IDE. So then we have the USB port. All these are all connected to the motherboard. So then we also have the memory. Now look at the random access memory, which is the basic working memory of our computer, because the computer uses the RAM to hold volatile, that is temporary instructions and data needed for processing. So that's what the memory does. So you can see the hard disk drive here. Let's come here to our CPU now. We can see the hard disk drive. So the hard disk drive consists of like one or more magnetic disks contained in a box, and they're actually used as a storage media in the personal computer. Yes, they are used as storage media in our computer, because the hard drive is the permanent storage area of your computer, because it stores information whether the computer is on or off. The hard drive stores information. That's what the hard drive. Then we have a on and off switch. So this on and off switch here, we actually have our CMOS battery. The CMOS battery is on our motherboard. We have our BIOS, the basic input and output system. So they all work and together. They all work hand in hand to bring about our system unit, which is the basic component of us, is a basic hardware component for the computer. So all these things are all connected. All these devices are all connected into they're connected into the computer. And these are case. So the case and the power supply is also, look, I can see where we have our case. We have our power connector. Yeah, this is the front here, this is the side view where we have, so we have our power supply. So this case is the outer shell that contains the computer and all internal peripheral devices. So the power supply provides regulated power to all the system components, and also cooling airflow to keep components from overheating. So you can see the fan here. So it actually keeps the components also from overheating. Then let's move up here. So like we've learned that the hardware component provides a physical interface to a computer system, but they cannot function without instructions to operate them. So it refers to the physical component of the system. So I'm sure that in this lesson now we've learned, we've discussed the computer hardware, we've described how it works, and we've discussed the characteristics of the computer hardware, and also described the types of computer hardware that we have. If you have any question, or if you want to contact me, you can see my email address agbanimu@gmail.com, or you can visit our website to have access to our course at deborah@agbanimu.com. See you in the next class.